Hey everybody, welcome to Retire with Style. I'm Alex and I'm here with none other than Wade Fowl. I was gonna say no other, this is weird. None other than Wade Fowl and Jason Riscala, who was with us last week. And today we're going to be discussing what to expect in retirement. Jason, take it away, man.
That is that is a never-ending topic of discussion, right? What to expect in retirement. We're gonna help narrow it down a little bit here, and speak
30
about.
minutes or less. 30 minutes or less. Now go on.
I'll try. I'll talk fast. Um, More getting away from the numbers, the financial aspect of it, because that is what it's going to be. What I want to talk about is kind of the changes that one may be experiencing through as they enter into retirement, and definitely throughout retirement. I think these are important to highlight, just as important as the numbers are, for that matter. So,
Okay.
I mean, really, when you look at it, there's five or six kind of major changes that occur, and with each one, there's a positive and a negative.
Real quick, before we
Response.
get into that, Wade, do you want to say hello? There was
Yeah.
like
Hey,
an
everyone. And
uncomfortable
also,
whatever that you didn't have an opening to
oh,
say hi, everybody.
hey, everyone. And also, if
Oh, there you
you're
go.
new to the show, Jason Riscala is the managing director of financial planning at McLean Asset Management. So he brings that real world experience of looking at these changes we'll talk about, seeing that with real life context with real individuals who he's worked with who've made that transition into retirement. So that's why it's great to have Jason on the show. Yeah,
Thank
Alex
you.
skipped the small talk this week as well as the, the introduction to the episode.
We're just cutting to the
Didn't
chase here.
I?
Yeah, let's cut to the
It's all
chase.
a world. It's all a world. What to expect when you're expecting
What? In retirement, like no.
in in retirement? Yes.
What to expect when you're expecting to retire. Yeah, that works.
Isn't that that book,
Yeah,
right?
so
Isn't
you
that the
mentioned
expectancy book?
six
Very
major
popular.
lifestyle changes. I think we kind of work through these. The first I think we should talk about, Jason, is this idea of a work identity, which may be more important to some people than others. But when you retire, this idea of losing your work identity, potentially losing the sense of purpose, if you felt your purpose was to be a worker, like you identify as a lawyer or accountant or whatever the case may be, losing that identity. So, how do you have a positive response, and what would a negative kind of response look like as well? And with the whole idea being, let's try to help guide people from the negative response of losing your identity to the how you can establish a more positive outlook on losing that work identity or potentially that sense of purpose.
Absolutely, and a very important one. I mean, I think we can't help it, but kind of build our identity around the work that we perform, the job that we do, the career that we have. It's usually one of the first questions brought up when you meet somebody. At one point or another, it's hey, so what do you do? It's so there is a lot of either self identity in it or the identity that others, kind of view us as that is tied to our work and what we do in our career. So having that kind of come to an end, in some cases abruptly, just very suddenly, you're no longer doing what you were doing before, can cause a lot of negative feelings around this loss of identity. That you can no longer identify with this career that you've done for quite a while in some cases, and put a lot of your time and effort into, and that can have some serious repercussions on your health. I mean, that has led to things like depression in some cases, worsening health conditions because of the psychological aspect of not kind of knowing yourself anymore. So there's a loss of the work identity that can actually have a ripple effect throughout your life. A lot of it to do with your health, even. So what's a positive way of being able to respond to that?
Well,
It,
just on that
Mhm.
point is so I started my career in Japan, and I think this can be an even bigger issue there. But maybe it illustrates the idea of people exchange business cards all the time, and so you need to have a business card. And so professors at the university, when it came time to retire, they would do anything. They didn't need a salary, they didn't need a paycheck at all. They needed a title so that they could have a business card with a title on it, because that was their identity. And if they couldn't have a business card that gave them a title, they felt like they were nobody. They were no longer a contributing member of society. It was a complete psychological kind of train wreck. They really identify through having a position and a title, and they would do anything to not give that up. And so that's maybe an extreme form of it, but that's kind of what we're talking about with that negative reaction.
Absolutely. It's kind
Wade,
of
Wade is 100% certain. I mean, not certain. He's right. He's been giving his business card say Wade Fowle, bon vivant.
Retiree.
retiring.
Guess you could just say you're a CEO or something.
Wade
CEO.
Enterprises.
No, in Prestige Limited. What was it in that movie? Step Brothers.
Prestige Worldwide.
Prestige
Sole
Worldwide.
proprietor.
Prestige Worldwide.
Or what was in the show? Vandalay Industries.
Right, Mandalay.
Yes.
And then Prestige Worldwide.
but there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, you've done something a long time and put a lot into it, and then all of a sudden the next day it's not there, right? So you can imagine like the effects it can have on
it's
somebody.
the cocktail party thing. Hey, what do you do? Ama, boom.
Yep.
You no longer have the ama.
No. It's the I was, or something of that nature.
How do you fill in the blank, right? That's kind of what you're getting at here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But ways to kind of maybe combat the negative feeling that can generate in some folks is, identify activities or goals that create like a purpose for you, a passion during your retirement. Those are very powerful words, purpose and passion, but they're meant to be that way because if you can identify activities that can fill that void of no longer, having a title, you open up a new identity essentially to yourself, and you can create one from that beginning onward. And it can be one that changes with time, because as your purpose and passion for things change, so can your what you would perceive as your identity. It doesn't have to stay constant like it did with your career kind of throughout the years. But look at it as an exciting time. Is really what it is. It's okay. That was my identity in that time, and now I'm going to be starting a new one, and it's going to be based off of what I want it to look like, not what was kind of mapped out through a career path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just this opportunity to really become who you truly want to be and forge a new identity and have the confidence and comfort with that you can take that potential negative and turn it into a positive.
And that's going to, this topic, this loss of work, is going to affect everybody differently, because some folks are going to say when their career is over, see you later, goodbye. I'm glad that's done, right? I mean, that's going to happen to some individuals. But for the ones that did find, their kind of purpose through their work, it's going to be, and it can be, a struggle off that initial hump.
Mm-hmm. And that's an important point to emphasize, is for all 6 of these categories we'll talk about today, some of these may not affect you at all. Some of these may have a big impact, and it really will vary from person to person how much you're impacted by each of the 6 topics we're talking about.
I think here, in a funny sort of way, that sort of magnet that your mom put in the refrigerator, that it's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice, comes full circle. Because let's say you had this job in which you were in this position of authority, but you were just a world-class jerk, but people had to kowtow to you, or they thought, your jokes were the funniest. that kind of thing, right? And then all of a sudden you retire and no one's beholden to you, and no one's answering anything. No one's, you're kind of, then all of a sudden, man, I used to be somebody.
Be a contender.
I never had that magnet, Alex. I had the "don't worry, I think you're cool," magnet from my mom. That was it. You're cool to me.
No, Wade had a Pobody's Nerfic magnet on his
Nerfic.
Oh, that's right. That's
on his refrigerator. But all right, so that's the first lifestyle change for retirees, a sort of work identity, and it's very true. I think that one hits hard for a lot of folks, depending on the capital, the friendship capital, or whatever that they've been building up until retirement.
And especially if you, just one more thing, Alex, especially if you had like, a quote unquote high profile job, as you call them, those things. that's where that effect can really, come into folks. As you had mentioned, maybe being a leader of a team or an organization or a company entirely, and people were calling on you or leading on you to make decisions, and all of a sudden now that's not happening, right? It can
Yeah.
definitely have an effect.
Yeah, and you have your Mo Green
You even
moment.
see this, like politicians from both sides of the political spectrum
Yeah.
may suffer from this particular issue with not willing to step down or step back from that seat of power. And that's not a
Oh,
political statement either way, because it's true on both sides.
so this is a good This is a good segue to increase unstructured time, because Wade did mention
Oh yeah,
when he retires, he wants to go through every ballot box in the great state of Texas and make sure everything is properly counted. So I
I
think that's how
just
he
want to
wants to
have
fill
time
it to
to watch
unstructured time.
cable
And that's
news
not
all
a
day.
political statement, Jason. That's just Wade talk. No, I'm kidding.
But that's right. Topic 2, increases in unstructured time. Jason, somebody working may have had 8 hours a day that was pretty structured at work.
Yeah.
Those 8 hours need to be replaced with something. So what's the issue there?
So, I mean, when you think about it, right, and you're working, especially if you're working for an organization or for somebody else, right, maybe not yourself with this, or less likely to be yourself, or in some cases more, right? I mean, self-employed people, some of them work around the clock, nonstop. But it's this losing of a typical day structure. An example, my own personal structure, right? I know that my day starts at 8 or 8:30 every day. And when it ends, that's to be determined on any given day. But 8 or 8:30, I know my day's starting,
Are you sure?
right?
Because your
And
Teams is not on until like 10:30.
I thought you
It's
said you
blank.
don't watch that, Alex. I thought you said
It's
I thought
not
you
until
said that wasn't
10:30
it.
that light turns green. So I don't know what the hell you're
Ding.
talking about.
It's
No.
like ding.
You got to get one
I
of those
see you, Jay.
mouse jiggler things.
All
There's
right,
structure
we'll go
there.
with it. 8 o'clock, fine. Roll with it.
I don't know what time zone your computer is on, but mine's on Eastern. No, but yes, I have a structure to it, right? And having that structure helps you to organize yourself. You know what you need to get done, the time to get it done in, and what happens around it. When you lose that structure, that can cause people to kind of say, okay, well, what do I do with my time? And that could lead people to do nothing with their time, at the end of the day. And maybe it can be that they don't wake up and have a plan, so they end up just kind of lounging around, watching television or what have you. Um, or it can be the classic, I'll do that tomorrow because I'm retired and I can, right? And then it just never gets done, whatever it is with it.
You know where I've seen this anecdotally. I don't know what the studies are or anything like that, but I've seen it with enough handful of clients that it hits you, or stories, or just you begin to a certain age, you feel it. Addictions, and specifically alcoholism.
Sure.
It's not uncommon. The guys hit the links, they drink. It's a martini lunch until like 3 o'clock. They come home effectively hammered, rinse, repeat. 2 years later, where are you? Kind of thing. It's obviously not like a happy topic, but unstructured time, I think, tends to be a culprit in something like this. Obviously,
Yeah,
there's other factors, but it doesn't help.
there's an expression that starts with like idle hands, right? Like
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you're
yeah.
not doing anything, problems can happen, as a result. So,
Yeah, the Music
so
Man. But also that they were getting out of the house there. But another issue is if you're not forced to get out of the house to go to work, you may just simply not get out of the house, period. So
that's
at
right.
the other extreme, that's where
Yeah.
and with the addictive powers of social media and everything else, spending more and more time just doing passive scrolling through your news feeds, watching television,
Yeah,
those
I think the
kinds
best
of
way to go.
habits that fill that time.
Well,
Yeah.
here's an example on the opposite end. So I have a younger son. He's 10 years old, and he has a morning routine when school's in session, right? Gets up, takes a shower, gets dressed, brushes teeth, eat breakfast, go to school. Summertime, that whole all thrown out the window. It'll be 8 o'clock at night. Did you take a shower, Dominic? No, not yet. Well, why not? Like it's the whole routine gets thrown around. And
Mhm.
so it's having that structure that you became accustomed to, and then all of a sudden that structure is gone. So you have to make the structure. You actually have to make the time and effort to do that for what you want to do. Now, that's something negative that can happen. You lose it, and then you start to go down a path of no structure whatsoever. But, a way that you can kind of, again, combat that would be to, help yourself decide on what new pursuits and interests you want to go into. Maybe be spontaneous, right? Just say, hey, I haven't been at this restaurant at the other side of town, before. And because I have the time and I don't have to, sit in traffic or do anything, I'll go at the time 11 o'clock when there's no traffic, and go and have lunch and come back. You can do things like that you weren't maybe able to do before, and be more adventurous with it. But kind of organizing yourself, maybe joining, again, clubs, hobbies, finding out the activities that you identified under the first challenge, which was losing your identity, to help you build your new identity. Find out, when are those happening, when do they occur, and make a structure around that, a schedule around that even.
Now, what are some things that people do, and why is it pickleball? No.
It's social, right? I mean, it's a social thing. You get together. It's,
No,
you don't have
absolutely right.
to. Anything can be that way, though, right? It's a social thing.
100%.
Yeah.
No, and I'd like to talk about like what Wade said, because we see this a lot with older clients that have retired as opposed to working clients, and part of it is because you're idling, you have a lot of more idle time. Let me say it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so Wade is right, and this goes back to my psychology days, where I'm curious if there have been studies, but yeah, you start doom scrolling for 3 hours, before you know it, it's gonna change. It's gonna affect your affect, right? And lo and behold, where are you? Whereas if you would have done something that is more engaging, you know, life is good, or life is better,
Mm-hmm.
if you will. So 100%, I think unstructured time becomes an Achilles heel for some.
And if you need that structure, Jason was kind of mentioning the point, but you can recreate that structure. If you feel like you need structure, sign up for that 8 a.m. exercise class at the YMCA at 5 days a week. And that's forcing you to keep that same sort of routine, get out of bed, get going with the day, building structure that way formally, or just informally if you don't have that. You don't have to kind of force yourself to get out of the house. Everyone's going to be different about how they approach creating structure or needing structure to their day.
And that's for time. Now, is there a difference between structuring time and maybe developing routines?
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, because routines are something that's repetitive, right? So the time structure can
Good point.
be just for today. This is what I want to do, but I might not
I
do it
get
again tomorrow or ever again, right? So yeah, the routine is like what Wade was touching on, just a moment ago, where it's, pick that 8 a.m. swim class at the Y Monday through Friday, right? That's the routine that you're getting into. But the time can be filled with other things that could be random, spontaneous, unplanned, or just something you do once and then that's it.
Got you.
Yeah.
And this is something that could affect people differently too, where some people might just have stress if they don't have a routine that's related to unstructured time, but it's different in the sense of the routine doesn't have to take 8 hours a day, but you need these routines just to have that sense of calm and comfort.
I'm a very routine type of person. I like routines, right? Um, and so I know that I will struggle with that in retirement, leading up to it. If I don't change kind of how I feel about routines leading up to that many years from now, but still nonetheless, if I stay kind of in the same mindset about routines, I'm going to struggle with that
Well,
myself
I
because
mean, you work out with weights quite a bit, right? How you have that? You're like locked in. If you
yeah,
didn't
I go
have that,
4 or 5 days a week.
yeah,
Hmm.
if you didn't have that, it would most likely hinder your ability to be productive in the other hours of the day, because you're missing that consistent sort of routine.
That's right. That's right. And also, and that helps to bring the structure to kind of my day too, as well, right? Because if I can have a routine, then I have a structure, as well. So it's easier for me to do that with a full time, job. But in retirement, I would be lost kind of initially going into that my own self,
Yeah,
you
if you
know.
didn't work out, and in the show notes, we're gonna put how much Jason benches. All right, so please check in on that. I think we have enough space for all the characters in the text. I think we can manage it.
It's going up. I'm proud of it. It's going up.
Wait, and I just trying to do 10 pull-ups, man. Come on. All right.
Okay.
What else are like what to
Well,
expect when you're expecting
so
in
the next
retirement?
one, Jason, would be the spending more time with your spouse or partner. And this could be a
So there is a real thing, that happens in retirement. I believe the term is gray divorce, right? Where people get divorced going into retirement. And I can tell you, I've worked in situations where that's the case. Um, and so, increasing time with your spouse can have positives, but it can also have negatives too, because that increased in time together can lead to greater conflicts or worsening of a relationship. Um, and you have to be on the same page, at least to a certain degree, when it comes to retirement. Because if not, it can cause a lot of turmoil, there and conflict, as I said. And it's a real thing. I've worked with many clients that unfortunately, upon retirement, decided to part ways, with the marriage. So it is a real thing. It does happen. So being aware that that could happen can help you to not have it happen, to you essentially.
I
Uh,
I'd chime in here, and I say this because I'm not retiring anytime soon or anything like that. But there's been a change with me and Christy, my wife, and what I mean by that is, okay, my twins are our twins are graduating this year, 18. So boom, they're out, and it was big time soccer, right? Big time soccer players traveling all over the country, things like that. And I have one 15-year-old left, but this sort of down on this sort of like reduction of soccer and all of this. What I've come to realize with what we've come to realize is our relationship has been defined, at least while the kids have been growing up, as sort of parents and soccer parents at that. Where everything revolved around that, and we're realizing right now that we need to redefine our relationship. It's all about maintaining the same trajectory as you're with your companion, if you will. The person who you were in your 20s is not who you were in your 30s. Is not who you were in your 40s, 50s, 60s. And so maintaining sort of a complementary relationship is harder than you think. And so we're not retiring, but I think when we retire, we're going to kind of reintroduce that same dynamic that we're going through right now, which is, okay, we're not no longer just, you're always a parent, but you're no longer you're defined by just, making sure your kids are alive by the time they're 18, they go to the university, they're good kids, that kind of thing. It really is, we're entering that second stage. And I say it kiddingly with the pickleball stuff, but Christy's starting to play pickleball with me, largely because we're realizing we're going to have a lot more time on our hands. This is something we can do together to sort of discover this, activity between us. I'm getting it. And I think that kind of dynamic begins to be replayed when both parties are retired. I'm just saying that. And I think when you don't see that reconciliation or that orthogonal fit, things start to go awry. My 2 cents. Wade, Jason?
It's a great point, and especially for individuals working outside of the home, that whole idea of that 8 hours you spend at work, you're now both at home at the same time together.
mhm.
Just making sure to manage that, and also expectations. This may be going back to more traditional like stereotypes about relationships, but if that person who is away at work all day is now at home and expecting to be taken care of, and the spouse does not have the same expectation that now the other spouse's retirement is going to give them a new full-time job to take care of this person, that's really where the relationship can go awry. And so having the right expectations, communicating with each other what each person expects out of the relationship, looking for ways to do things together, exactly like you're saying, Alex, with the pickleball, but also respecting the idea that you may not want to spend an extra 8 hours a day together. So having your own structured time away from each other in the day is also, and respecting each person's ability to do things on their own as well. Not everything's going to be together all the time. I think are really important aspects of trying to define a positive way forward with that additional time spent together.
Agreed. There's not much more I could add to that. I mean, just to couple what Alex said, that the interest of doing things together, and then also what Wade said, the interest of doing things apart too as well. I mean, I like fishing. My wife does not like fishing, so that would be something that I would want to maintain. And she has respected the fact that I like this sport and allows me to do it. She likes to do other things that I don't have an interest in, and so she goes ahead and does those, and that's okay. I mean, we're fine with that as long as we do come together, at times and do things together too. So it's finding this balance of one respect of each other's, kind of wishes and what they want to do and their interests, but then also finding the common ground too. And it's easier to say than do, but it's something that should be worked on and planned out, with your spouse.
No, right on,
Communication.
Mm-hmm. All revolves around communication, as Wade said. Yeah.
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 All right.
So
what
number
other
5.
items?
Yeah. Let's talk about just social connections and the idea that when you're at work, you may have all these work friends and social connections and meeting around the water cooler and everything that happens with just having those relationships at work. And now you've retired and all that's gone. So let's kind of talk about that lifestyle change in retirement and how that can be negative and how to potentially create a positive out of it.
Yeah, I mean, much like the identity, the first point that we had made, a lot of our social network can evolve or revolve and evolve from work, right, or around work. I can think back to some of my best friendships that I've had and continue to have even to this day came from work, meeting at a company, meeting at the similar job or something of that nature. Even my wife I met at, where I was working at that time. So, you build this kind of social network around, where you work at and what you do. And when that stops, right, there might be a handful of relationships that you maintain, through after you leave, let's say the company, the job, whatever it is. Once you leave it, there might be a few people that you maintain contact with, hopefully, but it most likely isn't going to be much. For most folks, there's a significant fall off of the communication that they have and the relationships that they develop there. So kind of, being aware that this could happen, this increased social isolation, if you will, which again can lead to other health concerns to be aware of, is important. And so how do you kind of, again, combat that? How can you have that not have such a great effect on you?
Well, and
Well,
just also on that point too, even if you do maintain those relationships with folks from work, monthly lunch meetings and things,
mhm.
gradually over time, if they're still working, they're going to have their own inside gossip or things going on at work that you're no longer really knowing what's going on anymore. And so feeling like you're not really as able to engage in those conversations because they're kind of talking about work topics that you just are not on top of at this point.
I think
So
that's
even with those good connections, it may gradually just decline as well, and anticipating that.
100%. We're almost. I mean, we're largely remote right now. McLean and retirement researcher and the like in this kind of state. But I remember times where the lunches. What it is there's a convenient way to go out. Like, hey, let's all go out. And you gather 3 or 4 people and you go have lunch right together. And to Wade's point, you talk about whatever, some water cooler issue at the office. But if you're retired, if you're the only one of that group that's retired, sure, they may invite you once a month or something like that. But after a while, you do feel like you're out of the loop. And so I think what occurs here is, look, there, certain people orbit your universe, your solar system for a certain number of years, right? And then they don't anymore because you've moved on in another direction. I think it's as much reduced social connections through work. It's incumbent upon you. And this goes back to, it almost bleeds into the loss of identity, increase in unstructured time, changing in your routines, increased time with sponsored. It's incumbent upon you to find a new network to some extent that shares similar, a cohort if you will, that has many similarities, because then you can sort of regenerate that orbit of friends that, sure, you always love and respect those at work, but it's hard if you're just in different orbits, in the same sense that I'm sure Christy and myself are going to have different friends in the next 10 years than we had in the last 5 years, because our friends in the last 5 years were parents of soccer players, right? That we see them every Sunday or Saturday at every game, twice, if not more. You kind of travel to games together, things like that. And they're very good friends. But now that the kids aren't connected, what happens, right? And so that, I think that's a similar analogy to work, and you just have to build new ones from there. If not, and that goes back to making sure your identity is right, your structured time is right, you have routines that put you in a position that you can facilitate a greater network.
That is the
This
bottom
can
line.
also relate to moving in retirement too, because if
Oh yeah.
if moving is a part of the retirement plan, and this also then connects to the relationships with a spouse. If one spouse is more outgoing than the other, establishing that new social network may be easy for one person, not so easy for the other person, or may not be important for the other person, or whatever the case may be. That can become a source of conflict as well. So, but Alex is right, though, that to the extent that you need the social relationships to not feel lonely and isolated, just trying to take advantage of some of that unstructured time to build those new relationships and social networks is kind of the direction to have something more positive coming out of that.
So Wade, since this is recorded, when I'm 66 and I give you a call and I say, "Hey Wade, let's catch up," what kind of answer should I expect from you?
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. No, it'll be great to
Who's this? That's what
Alex, who?
Do I know you?
Alex,
Retire with
what?
style. What? What is that? No,
You may not be able to find me at that point.
all right. And what's another lifestyle change for retirees that that they're gonna have to come to grips with?
So the last one that we want to talk about with you, Jason, would be the just health and the aging process, and dealing with the reality that as people age, there's going to be changes, then not necessarily dramatic changes, but gradual changes. Like I can no longer read things in front of my without putting them right up in front of my face anymore. That sort of thing. Gradual effects of aging that are the reality of life, and so how to manage the negative response and try to have a positive response there would be the last topic.
Yeah, I mean, the obviously Wade spoke about some of the negatives, right? Like just naturally your body is going to not be able to do things that it used to do, or not as if do it as efficiently as it used to. And just understanding that that is a part of the aging process, right? We all are going to go through. I play a couple games of basketball and I'm recovering for 2 days now. Before I recovered for 20 minutes and I could play, for again for another 2 hours. So it's just knowing that your body is not, gonna react or heal the same way that it did before from a physical standpoint. Now, from a mental standpoint, were some of the things that we've already mentioned, right? Is that if you don't realize the things that you could encounter, like losing your work identity, your structured time, the routines, that all can play a negative role on your mental capacity and your mental health.
And then worsen your physical health too. That you have to avoid that negative feedback loop of, like, if you're no longer have the reason to get out of the house, and so you end up staying home all day, and then you're more sedentary, you're not exercising,
or you
that causes your health to get worse, which then just makes it harder and harder to break out of that cycle. And so doing all you can to avoid getting into a negative feedback cycle of worsening health.
That's right.
Yeah, and
less physical activity.
And again, we're framing all of these well, not all of these, but we're focusing to some extent on the negative parts of retiring. I don't want people to think Jesus, I'm never going to retire. This is what going to hit me in the face. It's really more you have the ability to choose how you want to respond to these things. You can but they need a response, because not responding will most likely lead to a negative outcome. But responding to it and having the right expectations for it, and taking little steps towards addressing them, you will have a fulfilled retirement.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, certainly we don't want to dwell too much on the negative side, because overall, and we've seen this in surveys we've done with the RISA research, that generally speaking, retirees feel better about life than pre-retirees.
Yeah.
So people are figuring out a way to overcome these negatives. It's really just pointing out what these negatives may be and making sure you're aware of them and ready to manage that in a more positive direction.
Yeah. I mean, there's a certain part of planning for retirement that is awareness, right? It's just making you aware of things along the way. Some that may apply to you, some that may never apply to you, some that may apply to you in 5 years, but not today. So just being aware, though, is adds a lot of value. It is important, once you're going into
All
it.
right. So let's say, Jason, you take the previous episode that we did about setting yourself up, and this one about these things are things that you're going to have to actually address, and you got that down. Now we got to put numbers behind things to make sure that there's a roadmap for for this person. What happens there? How do you put all of this into practice?
Yeah. Well, that again is easier said than done, right? So you have to have some direction. So you've went through the thought process that we kind of laid out, identifying some of the activities you may want to do, some of the pitfalls you could fall into, and what you could do to avoid those. So kind of bringing this into action, putting this into play for you, can be done through like a planning type of engagement or exercise, if you will. You can do it yourself. You can enlist the services of professionals to help you with it or do it for you. But it's kind of putting all this into action. And it
Okay.
really, it leads off with two kind of areas, what we would consider, one being the RISA and the other being the funded ratio. Those are the two
Okay.
things that kind of lead off or can
So
help to lead that off.
this is our workflow. So once we've had this sort of information gathering about conceptually retirement and the existential issues, and I don't mean to put that in a shelf and say, okay, next, because that is an ongoing thing,
Yep.
right? But for the purposes of this podcast, once you want to begin to apply numbers and strategies to it, yeah, we do feel strongly that there is a workflow that there's an order of operations, better said, that I think is addressed. The first one is ERISA, and that's the retirement income style awareness, which is the assessment tool that spawned this whole podcast, which really is trying to get at how do you want to source retirement income. There's many ways to get it right, and we want to, at least directionally speaking, figure out which one appeals to you the most, because then planning can be done around that. And that goes to the funded ratio that you also discussed. Wade, funded ratio definition, you want to give that a crack?
Yeah. So after getting an idea about your retirement style, then you really just want to have a financial plan that looks at, are there going to be gaps where that retirement style becomes relevant? So the funded ratio is a tool we developed to gather all the household assets. And that's not just financial accounts and things, but also, if you're still working, the value of your future earnings, the value of your future Social Security benefits. Collect all your assets, calculate their values, and then figure out all your liabilities or all your expenses for retirement. How much do you want to project being able to spend on an ongoing basis? What kind of contingencies do you want to plan for, such as long-term care? Do you want to leave a legacy behind at the end? These are all liabilities or expenses that need to be funded. And the funded ratio is a tool to let you look at, do you have enough assets to meet all of your goals, liabilities, and expenses in retirement? And if you're overfunded, you've got more assets than liabilities. If you're underfunded, you have less assets and liabilities. And we also talk about how you can look at that category by category. And it's really, when we talk about the retirement income style for meeting basic expenses, that's, do you have sufficient reliable income to meet the basics? If not, how do you fill that gap? And the 4 broad retirement income styles provide different solutions to fill that gap, whether it's an investment portfolio, whether it's a commercial annuity, whether it's a bond ladder. That's really what the retirement income style seeks to address. And that's, you merge the retirement income style with the funded ratio, you've basically got a basic financial plan and then a path forward about what you might want to do to make tweaks to that plan to make sure you're on track and you've got your reliable essential expenses covered in retirement. And so that's the next step. And you can do that on your own as part of our retirement income challenge. Also, if you want someone to just skip that step and have someone help you with it, Jason Rizkala is always available to help people with one-time financial planning, and you can certainly reach out to him. But if you're still just wanting to explore further and thinking about the possibility, you can join us for our retirement income challenge, which is a free 4-day program. We'll meet, it's August 26th to August 29th from 12 p.m. Eastern to 2 p.m. Eastern each day. So 2 hours a day, 4 sessions, 8 hours total, free to sign up and to be a part of that. And we'll walk through the RISA, and you'll have homework to make sure you've taken the RISA. We'll walk through the funded ratio, and you'll have the homework to calculate your funded ratio. And we'll walk through then how to translate and implement or understand what the RISA and funded ratio are telling you. And then we'll get more into these non-financial considerations as well, like we've been talking about in the podcast too. Make sure that after that week-long program or the 4-day-long program, you've got a good foundation for thinking about your retirement and a good path forward for what you want to do next with implementing your financial plan. So we do have a link to sign up in the show notes. And if you are listening to this podcast in the future, this is something we do tend to do a couple times, or 3 or 4, probably more, 3 times a year, I would guess, where we like to have these open retirement income challenges, and we can have up to 500 people joining those. So it's an opportunity to help a lot of people all at the same time, and it's always a lot of fun to do those. So we hope to see you at our funded ratio, and Jason will be part of that. Bob French will be part of that. I'll be there. Alex will be there. Great opportunity to see you with I think we'll do that as a Zoom meeting. I'm not 100% sure, but we may be able to see you on camera as well as part of that session. So it's, again, August 26th, August 29th, and it's 12 Eastern to 2 p.m. Eastern each of those days.
August 26th
sound okay?
to the 29th. Yeah, that's great. Wow.
Yeah, through 4 days, 8 hours, 2 hours a day.
Oh my goodness. You're infomercial ready, Wade.
But wait, there's more. Sign up now and get something.
I was waiting to put flex tape on the screen. No, it was awesome, man. And Jason, with that too, is that enough? Should that get you going? I think it's a great offer, the whole retirement income plan. That's why we did these podcasts, to kind of lead into this, to really stir the pot and contextualize what the retirement income challenge is. Anything missing there? Any add-ons potentially afterwards or whatnot?
Well, the retirement income challenge, it's meant to get you started, right? I mean, that's really the idea. Help you organize your thoughts, help you organize things to begin the planning process with you. You know, if at the end of the challenge it seems like something that you want to be helped with, or something you want done for you, so that you can assure yourself that you didn't miss anything or misinterpret something or look at something the way it shouldn't, there's always help out here that can help. McLean has a service, the planning service, that can help with that. It's called Standalone Planning and Engagements. And you can seek something like that kind of service for folks that really want it to be done for them and to make sure that all kind of rocks are unturned appropriately. But the challenge does give you the building blocks to be able to go at it on your own, at least to a certain point that you feel comfortable with. So I think there's a lot of value that's added there.
Excellent. And that concludes today's episode. Anything else, Wade? Jason?
No, thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll catch you next week on Retire with Style.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Jason.
Anytime, Jason. Take care.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.